Here is something that will change how you read the Bible. The word God, the English word God, is not a name, it is a category. It is the same kind of word as king or doctor or shepherd. It tells you what something is. It does not tell you who it is. And when you read the Bible using only that one word, you flatten something the original text never flattened. Because in the Hebrew scriptures, God does not go by one name. He goes by many. And every single time he revealed a new one, it was not random. It was not decorative. It was because the person standing in front of him was in a situation that required them to know something specific about him that they could not have learned any other way. The names of God are not titles. They are not honorifics. They are biography. Each one is a moment where the eternal God of the universe stepped into a specific human crisis and said, "Here is what I am to you." In this, right now, when you line them up, when you trace every name from Genesis to the New Testament, something extraordinary emerges. You are not looking at a list. You are looking at a portrait. A portrait built one name at a time, across centuries, through some of the most painful and impossible moments in human history. That is what we are going to do today. And by the end, you will not just know what these names mean, you will understand why they were given when they were given, and why that timing tells you more about God's character than the names themselves. The first name, Elohim. The first word for God in the entire Bible is not YHWH. It is not Father. It is Elohim. Genesis 1. In the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth. Now here is what most people never notice. Elohim is a plural noun. It literally ends in im, the Hebrew masculine plural suffix. The same ending you find on cherubim, seraphim. And yet, every verb connected to Elohim in Genesis 1 is singular. He created, he said, he saw. A plural noun acting as a singular subject. Grammarians have argued about this for centuries. But the text does not let you ignore it. The very first name of God in the Bible is grammatically complex. It announces, before anything else, that this God does not fit neatly into the categories you came in with. Elohim comes from a root meaning strength, power, the one who is mighty. It is the name of God as creator, the one powerful enough to speak and have the universe obey. When the author of Genesis reaches for a name for the God who makes something from nothing, he does not use a small word. He uses the fullness of power, the might that nothing can resist, before any human being exists, before there is land or sea or light. The first thing the Bible tells you about God is that he is Elohim. His power is not borrowed, it is not conditional, it is his nature. He does not become powerful, he is power. The second name, Yahweh. The second name is the most important name in the entire Hebrew Bible, and for centuries it was the name observant Jews would not say out loud. Yahweh, 4 Hebrew consonants, Yod, He, Vav, He, the tetragrammaton. The name. When Jewish scribes copied scripture and reached this word, they would stop, put down their pen, wash their hands, pick up a new pen, and only then write it. Which is why your Bible prints Lord in all capitals every time you see it. Those capitals are telling you the original word is Yahweh, the name no one would say. And here is why it matters. Because Yahweh is the name God gave himself. Exodus 3. Moses is 80 years old, tending sheep in the wilderness. He spent 40 years in the desert after fleeing Egypt. Whatever sense of destiny he once had, gone. He is a shepherd, that is all. And then a bush catches fire and does not burn up, and a voice comes out of it. Moses asks the question, "If the people ask me what your name is, what do I tell them?" The answer God gives is one of the most studied sentences in the history of human language. YHWH. I am who I am. YHWH comes from the Hebrew verb haya, to be, to exist. It is the name of the one whose existence depends on nothing else. Every created thing exists because something else caused it to exist. Yahweh exists because he is existence itself. He cannot not exist. But here is what most people miss about this moment. Moses is not asking a philosophical question. He is asking a pastoral one. He is about to walk back into Egypt and tell 400 years' worth of slaves that God sent him. He needs a name, something the people can hold on to. And the name God gives him is the one who simply is, the one who was before anything was, the one whose existence is the reason anything else exists at all. And then God tells Moses something else. He says, "This is my name forever, my memorial for every generation." The people who first received this name were slaves, people who had been in Egypt for 400 years, who had cried out to a God they could barely remember, who had been born into bondage and expected to die in it. And this is the name he gave them, not the God of the philosophers. Yahweh, I am. I am here. I am with you. The story is not over. The third name does not come from Moses. It does not come from a patriarch. It comes from a woman nobody expected. Her name is Hagar. She is Egyptian. She is a slave. She belongs to Abraham's household, and she has been used and then discarded. When she became pregnant with Abraham's child, his wife Sarah turned on her so harshly that Hagar ran into the desert, pregnant, alone, with no one. The angel of the Lord finds her at a spring in the wilderness and asks where she is going. She can answer the first part. I'm running from my mistress. She cannot answer the second. She does not know. The angel makes her a promise, tells her to go back. And Hagar does something that no one else in the Bible does. She gives God a name. Genesis 16:13. You are El Roi, the God who sees me. El means God, the powerful one. Roi comes from the Hebrew verb Raah, to see, not to glance at, not to observe from a distance, to look at someone and perceive them fully, to see not just their outward circumstance but the interior of them. What is happening inside? This is the only place in the Bible where God receives a name from a human being. And it comes from a woman with no status, no standing, no advocate, who was in the worst situation of her life, in the middle of a desert she had no business surviving. And she gives him this name because she encountered a God who saw her when no one else did. Think about that. In a book that will spend the next 1,000 pages tracking patriarchs and covenants and kings, the only name a human being gives God is given by a runaway slave woman in the desert who had nothing. And the name she gives him is the God who sees. El Shaddai, the all-sufficient one. Abraham is 99 years old. He has been waiting 24 years for a promise that has not arrived. God told him he would be the father of a great nation. His wife Sarah is 90. She has never had a child. The biological window did not just close, it closed a generation ago, and God appears to him and introduces himself with a name Abraham has never heard. Genesis 17:1. I am El Shaddai. Walk before me and be blameless. The translation in most Bibles is God Almighty, but that is a translation of convenience. The actual root of Shaddai has been debated for centuries, and both main interpretations say something remarkable. One traces Shaddai to Shaddad, to overpower, to be more than enough. On this reading, El Shaddai means the God who exceeds what the situation requires, who overpowers the obstacle not by force but by abundance. The other, Chish, found in some of the earliest Aramaic translations, connects Shaddai to the Hebrew word for breast, Shad, the nurturing one, the one who feeds and sustains his children. Both meanings held together tell you something important. The God who overmasters every obstacle is the same God who nourishes. Power and provision from the same source, and El Shaddai is introduced at exactly the moment when Abraham and Sarah are physically incapable of what God promised them. That timing is not accidental. The name is a direct answer to the specific problem in front of them. You cannot do this. Your bodies cannot do this. And the name God chooses for himself in that moment is, I am the one for whom your limitation is not the final word. In the very next chapter, Isaac is conceived. That is El Shaddai. YHWH Jireh, the Lord will provide the compound names of God, names that begin with YHWH and add a second word, all follow the same pattern. A crisis arrives. God meets the need. And the place where it happened receives a name that preserves what happened there forever. The first compound name comes from the most devastating story in Abraham's life. Genesis 22. God tells Abraham to take Isaac, his only son, the son he loves, the one he waited 99 years for, and offer him as a burnt offering on a mountain. The text gives you almost no psychological information about Abraham. It just tells you what he does. He gets up early in the morning, he cuts the wood, he takes his son, 3 days of travel, and on the third day, that detail again, the third day, the day of resolution. The day God shows up when things seem finished. Abraham sees the mountain, and Isaac asks the question that must have broken his father open. Father, here's the fire and the wood, but where's the lamb? Abraham's answer is 4 words in Hebrew, Elohim Jireh. God himself will provide the lamb. He binds Isaac, he raises the knife, the angel calls out and stops him. Abraham looks up and sees a ram caught in a thicket. He offers the ram, and then he names the place, YHWH Jireh. The Lord will provide. More literally, the Lord will see to it. The same root as El Roi, to see. God who sees the need before it becomes a crisis. God who places the provision at exactly the place you are going to need it. And here is the detail that stays with you. He names a mountain, not just a moment. A mountain, so that everyone who comes to that place, and they would come, because this is where Solomon would later build the temple. This is the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. Everyone who arrives carries the name with them. Before you get there with your need, the mountain already has an answer written into it. YHWH Jireh. The Lord will provide. Not past tense, future. A promise that Rapha, the Lord who heals, 3 days after the Israelites crossed the Red Sea, the greatest miracle of their national history. They are in the desert and they are thirsty. They find water at a place called Marah and rush to drink. The water is bitter, undrinkable. The people grumble. Moses cries out to God. God shows him a tree. Moses throws the tree into the water. The water becomes sweet, and then God speaks. Exodus 15:26. I am YHWH Rapha, the Lord who heals you. Rapha, the Hebrew verb, means to heal, to restore, to make whole. But its range in the scriptures is wider than physical healing. Rapha is used for healing of the body, healing of water, healing of land, healing of a relationship. Wholeness restored wherever something had been broken. The name arrives right after bitter water, right after something that should have been life-giving turned out to be poison. And God's response to that moment is not a lecture, it is a name. I am the one who turns what is bitter into something you can drink. And the healing comes through a tree. Moses throws a piece of wood into the water and it changes. In a book that is always pointing forward, that detail stays. Healing coming through wood, bitter water made sweet by what is thrown into it, a shadow of something larger than the immediate event. YHWH Raah, the Lord my shepherd. Psalm 23 is the most recognized passage in the Bible across almost every culture. Read at more funerals than any other text. Whispered in more hospital rooms. Memorized by more children. And it opens with a name. YHWH Jireh, the Lord is my shepherd. Raah is the Hebrew word for shepherd. But notice the construction. Not the Lord is a shepherd. Not the Lord is like a shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd. The intimate possessive, this is personal. David wrote this, and David knew exactly what shepherding was. Before he was a king, before he fought Goliath, before anyone in the world knew his name, he spent years alone in the hills watching sheep. He killed a lion. He killed a bear. He lay down in green pastures. He walked through valleys where the darkness came in from both sides. When David reaches for the name that captures everything he has experienced of God, he reaches for the name of the thing he used to be, a shepherd, the person who walks ahead of the sheep so they have a path, who leads them to water, who uses a rod to fight off what threatens them and a staff to pull them back when they wander, who goes after the one that is lost, who lays himself down at the entrance of the fold at night so nothing gets to the sheep without going through the shepherd first. There is a detail most translations soften. The valley of the shadow of death. The Hebrew is Tsalmoveth, literally deep darkness, the shadow of death. Not metaphorical difficulty, the actual place where death is close. And what does David say about it? Not, I hope the Lord will be there. Not, I will try to remember his promises. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. YHWH. Raah, the one who does not send the sheep into the valley and wait at the other end, the one who walks through it with them. The names start to converge. Let's stop for a moment, because when you lay all of these names end to end, a shape becomes visible that you cannot see when you look at each one in isolation. Elohim tells you there is a God whose power has no ceiling. YHWH Jireh tells you that this God chose to enter into personal relationship, not because the people were impressive, but because he is faithful. Elroy tells you he sees the ones no one else sees. El Shaddai tells you he is sufficient when everything natural says there is not enough. YHWH Jireh tells you his provision is already in place before you arrive at the need. Rapha tells you he is in the business of making broken things whole. YHWH Raah tells you he walks through the dark places alongside you. Every name is the same God seen from a different angle, from a different crisis, through a different person's experience of needing him in a specific way. The names are not a list of attributes, they are testimonies. Each one is someone saying, I was in a situation where I needed something I could not supply from within myself. And this is who showed up. And the portrait that builds name by name, century by century, is not a distant God, not a transactional one, not a God who shows up for the impressive moments and disappears for the ordinary painful ones. It is a God who is most consistently revealed in the hard places, in the desert, at the bitter water, on the mountain with the knife raised, alone in a wine press, walking through a dark valley. The final name in this journey does not come from the Old Testament. It comes from a garden in Jerusalem the night before the cross, Mark 14:36. Jesus falls to the ground and prays. And the word he uses for God, the word that opens the prayer, is Abba. Abba is Aramaic. It is the word a child used for their father, not the formal word, not the word used in official or religious speech, the everyday word, the word a child says reaching up for their father's hand. No Jewish prayer before Jesus used this word for God. Not one. The idea of approaching the God whose name was too holy to pronounce out loud, the God before whom Moses covered his face, approaching that God with the word a child uses for their father was without precedent. And Jesus does not just use it himself, he teaches his disciples to use it. When they ask him how to pray, he says, say, Our Father. Abba, not my Father, our Father. The intimacy is meant to be shared. Paul picks this up in Romans 8:15. You did not receive the spirit of slavery to fall back into fear, but you received the spirit of adoption, by whom we cry out, Abba, Father. The spirit of adoption, the spirit by which we cry out using the same word Jesus used in the garden, in the worst moment of his human life, when the sweat was falling like drops of blood and the cross was hours away. That word, his word, is now available to you. Not because of anything you have done, because of what he did in that garden, on that cross, in the tomb that did not hold him. Every other name in this list told you something about what God can do. This name tells you what you are. You are his child, and the word you use when you pray is the same word a child uses reaching for their father. What the names say to you. Here's what I want you to take from this. Every name of God in the Bible was given in a specific moment, to a specific person, in a specific crisis. That is not coincidence. It means the knowledge of who God is was not delivered all at once in a complete theological download. It was revealed progressively, situationally, through real people standing in impossible situations. Hagar does not get El Shaddai, she gets El Roi, the God who sees, because a woman alone in the desert does not need the theology of divine sufficiency. She needs to know she has been seen. Abraham on the mountain does not get YHWH Rapha. He gets YHWH Jireh, the one who provides, because that moment does not need healing. It needs a ram in a thicket. Moses at the bitter water does not get YHWH Raah. He gets YHWH Rapha, the one who heals, because the specific thing broken in that moment was water, not direction. Each name was perfectly matched to the person who needed it and the moment they were in. And that means something for you right now. Maybe you are in the Hagar situation. You feel unseen, invisible, like the people who matter are in the tent and you're out in the desert and no one is coming. El Roi sees you, not as a general cosmic statement. The same God who found a runaway slave woman in a desert before she died, he sees you. Specifically, right now. Maybe you are at Marah. Something that should have been life-giving turned out to be bitter. You finally arrived at the water, and it was undrinkable. YHWH. Rapha, the bitter water does not stay bitter. The tree goes in, and the water changes. Maybe you are on the mountain with the knife raised and nothing in your hands but a promise that is 3 days old. YHWH Jireh. The provision is already there. You have not arrived at the place yet, but it is already there. And maybe you're in the dark valley right now, the place where the darkness comes in from both sides and you cannot see the way through. Raah. He is not waiting at the other end of the valley. He's walking through it with you, the same one who walked every dark valley ahead of you and came out the other side. He is in the valley with you. The names of God are not a theology course. They are a record that someone stood in an impossible situation and found that God was more than enough for that specific thing. From Elohim, who spoke the universe into existence, to Abba, who taught us to call him Father. From El Roi, who found Hagar dying alone in the desert, to YHWH Jireh, who placed the ram before Abraham arrived at the need. The names are not a list, they are a biography, and the biography is still being written. Because the same God who gave himself a new name every time his people needed to see a new part of who he was, he is still the same God, doing the same thing, matching the name to the moment. Still Jireh when you're on the mountain with nothing but a promise. Still Rapha when the water is bitter. Still Roi when you feel invisible. Still Raah when the valley is dark. Still Abba, always Abba. If this opens something up for you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to Deep Made Simple. Leave a comment. Even one word helps more people find this. And keep us in your prayers. God bless you.